Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. This is Mari Chan, and welcome back to my channel. You guys, we are almost done with Remnants of Filth Volume 4, also known as Yu by Rou Bao or Meat Bun, and we're covering a little bit more ground today, and then we have the live reading session on Patreon, and then the discussion. So, yeah. Hopefully I don't cry in any more of these chapters, but let's see what's going on with Goo Mahng in the Sushu Terrace. Chapter 122. From Now On, Into the Abyss. In Chonghua Sushu Terrace. Elder Zhou. Greetings to Elder Zhou. Zhou He was a strict person, and he had a rigid habit of changing his clothes. Outside, he wore the former robes of his own family, but the moment he returned to Sushu Terrace, he went first to the bathing room to change into Sushu Terrace robes, no matter how important the tasks awaiting him. Given his station, no one would give him grief for wearing former robes, but Zhou He insisted on the uniform of Sushu Terrace cultivators. Every agency in Chonghua had a uniform that represented their function. Most popular among young men were the tailored black combat uniforms of Moshi's Bureau of Military Affairs with their narrow waist, tapered sleeves, turned-down collar, golden buttons at the hems, and golden tassel at the lapels. Most popular among young women were the uniforms of Shunnong Terrace, jade-green robes of peacock silk perfumed with eaglewood incense, and a gauzy white silk coat worn over top. In comparison, the standard attire of Sushu Terrace was less appealing. A pale blue robe with a standing collar and narrow sleeves. Nothing else. Some interpreted Zhou He's obsession with his uniform robes as a compulsive disorder, while others attributed it to superstition, among various other theories. In reality, the reason Zhou He insisted on changing was a simple one. He loved his work. With every assignment he accepted, he felt an indescribable sense of ceremony. Changing into the uniform robes marked the beginning of a ritual. He was about to enjoy an intoxicating ecstasy. Elder Zhou, the goo worms and magical implements have been prepared. The specimen is waiting in the Asura room and is currently in stable condition. Zhou He strode down the long corridor as he adjusted the steel claw gauntlet on his left hand. At this, he paused in shock. Stable? How stable? The attendant nodded. Extremely stable. There's no strong reaction as of yet. Zhou He didn't immediately respond. After a long moment, he murmured, A legendary beast of the altar indeed. Sushu Terrace's Asura room was deep underground. As Zhou He neared it, the iron chains over the doors retracted with a clang, and the stone doors carved with the indomitable figure of the stalwart warrior Xing Tian slowly swung outward. A gust of freezing air swept from the gap. The guards flanking the stone door performed obeisance toward Zhou He. One of them shook out a sable overcoat, preparing to drape it over the elder's shoulders. Zhou He raised a gauntlet hand. There was no need. He walked straight in. The Asura room was a cold cell roughly 20 yards wide. Because most experiments were best conducted at freezing temperatures, the inner walls of the Asura room were built of bricks cut from ancient Kunlun ice. The walls, ceiling, and floors were all ice, and at first glance, it was like walking into a mythical palace of mirrors. At present, Goo Mahng was sitting in the middle of the Asura room, his eyes closed in meditation. Zhou He walked over and looked at this man with interest. He'd seen many test subjects during his tenure here. Most broke down in terror as soon as they crossed the threshold of Sushu Terrace, never mind the Asura room. He had never seen anyone like Goo Mahng, who acted as if there was nothing out of the ordinary. Had this person lost his mind so completely that he didn't know what he would face here? Or had the Liao Kingdom's black magic tempering given this mortal's body some special ability, making him unafraid of death or pain? Either way, it was bound to be a fascinating examination. Zhou He grew more and more excited. He licked his lips, his long fingers gripping Liao Ying, the falcon at his waist. Perhaps because of the exceptionality of Goo Mangg's identity and reactions, Elder Zhou He, who had grown accustomed to seeing his specimens as beasts, felt a fresh curiosity toward this subject. He couldn't help wondering, what was Goo Mahng thinking right now? Goo Mahng seemed to have read his mind. He slowly opened his eyes to reveal a lupine blue stare and spoke 2 words. "It's cold."
"It's cold? That's it?"
Zhou He stared intently into those clear blue eyes, as if trying to dredge up some more turbulent emotions. But there were none. How could there be any? How could Zhou He uncover the slightest hint of his true feelings if Goo Mahng didn't want him to? Who did he think Goo Mahng was? The Emperor's unsuspected spy? The agent who had infiltrated the Liao Kingdom for more than 5 years. The General Goo who had endured endless judgment, criticism, abuse, death, and guilt, yet had gritted his teeth and walked down the long road into the darkness. When he'd first defected to the Liao Kingdom, the Liao officials hadn't dared believe it. They tried hundreds of different tortures and all their malicious methods, but none had pried a solitary secret from his mouth. How could Zhou He possibly succeed? "It doesn't matter," Zhou He said. "Very soon. The cold won't bother you." He raised a hand. At the beckoning of his fingers, the assisting attendants entered the Asura room. "Begin," Zhou He intoned. Through dense lashes, Goo Mahng looked up at those Sishu terrace cultivators standing in formation in their pale blue robes. Each held a wooden tray arranged with daggers, goo worms, magical implements, and medication. The daggers were for slicing open flesh. The goo worms and implements were for conducting black magic experiments, while the medicine was something quite precious. The finest divine tincture of life for preserving his life at crucial moments. The cultivator closest to him lifted a tray with a roll of snow-white bandages. Goo Mahng knew this wasn't for binding wounds, but to fill his mouth and keep him from biting through his teeth to end his own life. Goo Mahng closed his eyes. He remembered now that this was the 2nd time he was experiencing such a scene, the first time in the Liao Kingdom. Though the Time Mirror hadn't returned much of what passed in the years he defected, this scene was so painful it must have been an exception. He had buried Lu Zhengxing's head on the shores of the soul-calling abyss. Then, just as the Emperor planned, he put on a show of having been pushed to the edge and defected to the Liao Kingdom in a fit of rage. The great hall of the Liao Kingdom was paved with golden red bricks, such that the entire hall seemed to be aflame. The full court of civil and military officials resembled a horde of monsters and demons, each with their own grotesque elements. Liao's youthful ruler wore the beaded crown and sat atop the lofty throne. He was a child of no more than 16, and exerted no control over the demons skulking beneath the throne. Their true master was the golden-masked man who stood at the ruler's side, the Guosher of the Liao Kingdom. Goo Mahng remembered taking a knee, bowing as he offered up proof of his allegiance, a jade scroll containing detailed records of Chonghua's secret techniques from the past century. Though the most important techniques had been excised, this scroll was still one of Chonghua's most important classified records. The Liao Kingdom court officials' eyes shone when they glimpsed it, and even the king of Liao craned his neck, anticipatory glee showing on his face. Only the Guosher chuckled through that golden mask with its grinning eyes.
"General Goo, let's not talk about the offering yet. Why don't we first discuss why you wish to turn your back on Chonghua?"
Goo Mahng indignantly recounted his experiences after the defeat at Phoenix Cry Mountain to the gentlemen of Liao. When he mentioned his sworn brother's execution, tears flowed down his face, his voice breaking with sobs. Even before his defection, many in the Liao Kingdom had heard rumors of Goo Mangg's treatment after Phoenix Cry Mountain. Now, as they heard the tale from his own lips and gazed at the jade scroll filched from his own nation, their suspicion began to fall away.
"I've thoroughly experienced the disgrace Hua Guoju felt back then,"
Goo Mahng said in the end. Footnote number 12. Guoju, honorary term of address for the founding ruler of a nation.
"Instead of remaining in Chonghua to be humiliated, I'd rather follow in the footsteps of Hua Guoju and defect."
Hua Po-an was the founding ruler of the Liao Kingdom. Was there anyone at the scene who couldn't see the similarities between Hua Puan and Goo Mahng? The Liao ruler was immediately convinced, his voice shaking slightly with barely concealed excitement.
Since this subject has had such a realization, then...
Halfway through, he suddenly felt he had overstepped. He snapped his mouth shut and shot a glance at the man beside him, meeting the Guoshi's smiling eyes. Cold sweat soaked through the Liao ruler's heavy robes. He swallowed and hastily added,
Then we'll await the Guoshi's counsel.
The Guoshi narrowed his eyes in a smile, clasping both hands behind his back and turning toward Goo Mahng, who was kneeling below.
General Goo, beast of the altar, this one is indeed familiar with your famous military prowess. The sworn fealty of a mighty beast is naturally a blessing from the heavens to our Liao, a cause for great celebration. But...
The Guoshi's voice grew soft. His eyes, which had been curved in a smile, suddenly snapped wide, glinting with cold light as he looked out at Goo Mahng through the eyes of the golden mask.
But General Goo,
the Guoshi said,
do you know what Hua Guozhi did first, when he forsook Chonghua?
As those cold, slender eyes studied Goo Mahng, he felt a pain like the bite of a venomous snake. The Guoshi smiled faintly, but those black eyes held not a hint of mirth.
Hua Guozhi ordered his most loyal attendants to tie him up, and over the course of 3 days and 3 nights, tore Chonghua's techniques and all its magic from his body. Then he poured the breath of black magic into the vessels of his heart. With one determined act, he broke all ties with Chonghua and with his honored teacher, Chen Tang.
The ominous glint of cruelty gleamed brighter with every word he spoke. By the end, that golden mask seemed to have melted through from hot malice. One could almost see that terrible and wicked face beneath. The Guoshi smiled a menacing smile.
General Goo, since you seek to follow in Hua Guozhi's footsteps, you know what proof of your allegiance we require, do you not?
And thus, Goo Mahng was escorted into the Liao Kingdom's soul timbering room. It was a room remarkably similar to Chonghua's Sishu Terrace, a cold chamber built from dark ice, its attendants dressed in near-identical pale blue robes. But trays that held magical implements, goo worms, daggers, and bandages, all were exactly the same. The interrogation and the timbering were conducted simultaneously over 3 days and 3 nights. The flesh of his back was flayed open along his spine. Goo worms that ate spiritual energy were seeped deep into the wounds, and thousands of puppet strings crawled along his blood vessels, snapping and scrambling every meridian that ran with Chonghua's magic and making a gory mess of his viscera. That Guoshi sat in a rosewood chair, legs crossed, arms folded over his knees, studying Goo Mahng, while he suffered, while he wailed, while he endured a life worse than death, saliva dripping from the corners of his mouth, his flesh mangled, his organs sliced to pieces. The Guoshi would gently ask him,
General Goo, do you regret it?
He asked him,
Going from white to black is as difficult as going from black to white. You need to be sure. Once your body is filled with black magic spiritual energy, only the Liao Kingdom and all of the 9 provinces and 28 nations will take you in. Does your hatred of Chonghua run so deep?
Goo Mahng was already soaked in his own blood. But this was nothing. The greater agony came from the puppet strings burrowing deep into his back like the 8 limbs of a crab. Those thousands of steel silk threads had surely been refined with true compulsion magic. Whenever he lied, the strings threaded through his body bristled with sharp thorns, their barbs sinking deep into his flesh, ready to tear him apart. His vision had long since gone blurry with blood, tears, sweat, everything. He heard the Liao Kingdom's Guoshi crooning a question.
Do you really hate them? Hate them enough to meet them with blades drawn? Hate them enough to become their enemy for life?
Convulsing, Goo Mahng felt himself about to vomit. He lowered his head, choking as he laughed.
Yes, I hate them. I hate them so deeply.
Steel thorns pierced bone, and his entire body twitched. But Chonghua's beast of the altar still clamped his mouth shut, not saying a word, not revealing a thing. He endured the agony of his body, lips tremoring as he spat out fragmentary words.
Yes, I hate. I don't regret. From now on, I, Goo Mahng, cut all ties with Chonghua. I, Goo Mahng, am defecting to the Liao Kingdom, swearing loyalty to the Liao Kingdom. For vengeance, I am willing to be tempered, to fall onto the demonic path. Never will I feel regret. Never regret.
Bloody tears streamed down his face. He had been tortured to the point of madness, his hair disheveled and face covered in filth, like a vengeful ghost cackling in despair. He didn't know how he kept his mouth shut, but whenever he couldn't bear it, he would work to remember the past. He thought of the Emperor speaking on the Golden Terrace.
General Goo, we ask you to believe us. We have never, and never will, see you as cheap pawns, as lowly slave-born bodies.
He thought of Lu Jianxing telling him,
Mangar, keep going. Whatever you choose, your Luga will be happy for you.
He thought of Morsi. His heart felt a heart-wrenching pain the moment he thought that name. He remembered the cool summer breeze the first time he saw Morsi, and the clarity of Morsi's eyes when he turned. He remembered the first smile Morsi had shown him and the sorrow on his face at their last farewell. It had been more than 10 years since, and it wasn't that he'd never been moved, that he'd never wanted to recklessly risk it all and accept what Morsi offered, to believe the two of them could truly cross that chasm and share a lifetime together. But when all was said and done, they couldn't overcome fate or defeat destiny. How would his princess, his highness, his little Shirdi feel after learning of his defection? He would probably hate him, wouldn't he? Hopefully he would.
Don't be so impulsive anymore. Don't be silly and oppose the court. Don't try to vouch for me. You absolutely mustn't do anything like that. Morsi, I'm sorry. Your Shushong really, really loves you. Every uttered I love you, every word of warm affection I ever said was true. And from now on, every I hate you, every mocking insult will be false. You absolutely, absolutely mustn't regret that when Shushong defected, you weren't at my side, that you couldn't attempt to persuade me one last time, that you couldn't stubbornly attempt the impossible, because...
Goo Mangg's tears fell endlessly down his cheeks, mixing with his sweat and blood, soaking that ruined, nearly inhuman face.
Because the one who transferred you to the frontier and delayed your return wasn't the Emperor at all. The person who suggested that was me. It was me. I was the one who was too weak. I was too afraid to let you see me leave, too afraid to hear you try to convince me, too afraid to see the heartbreak in your eyes again. I was afraid that if you looked at me, I wouldn't be able to leave. I'm sorry. I have to go. I must go. I'm sorry. In the end, I still chose Chonghua, chose my brothers, chose this path. And so I had to part with you. I'm sorry.
More blood trickled from his forehead and to his eyes. That handsome face he held so dear slid away with his tears, and Morsi disappeared. In his hazy scarlet vision, he saw the flames in defeat at Phoenix Cry Mountain. He saw brains smeared into the ground. He saw those with whom he had once sat round a fire, drunk wine in the snow, advanced and retreated, chatted about daily rations and the nation's ideals. They looked at him from across the shores of the flowing river of the underworld. Goo Mahng had a vivid hallucination. He saw himself floating on that vast netherworld river, just about to swim across, just about to take hold of their hands.
Wait for me. Wait for me. I'm coming. I'll bring you home. I'll take you back.
An excruciating agony assailed him. The demon claw clinging to white bones of his spine had drunk its fill of Chonghua's magic techniques and spiritual energy. It ripped itself from his flesh, yanking back against exposed bone. He screamed. 70,000 comrades, his unblemished soul, the future he dreamed of, all vanished with this vicious tearing. Black magic, spiritual energy mixed with Fey Wolf blood flooded into his body. Those brilliant, smiling faces of his comrades and his brothers dwindled to nothing in that field of scarlet. Goo Mahng heaved. From now on, he could never go back. Never again. He knew he could never again walk among them. The Guoshu took the opportunity to grab his face, stroking a thumb over that cheek mottled with blood and tears as he cooed.
General Goo, do you regret it? Do you grieve for that bright and honorable magic of your motherland that's been stripped away?
Goo Mahng convulsed and shivered. His body was not strong. He had a great dread of pain and suffering. He would balk at pulling a thorn stuck in his nail or drinking medicine when he was sick. But this fragile body contained a soul that hadn't the same softness. Goo Mahng looked up, his eyes blood red, and hoarsely said,
"No."
Surprised, the Guoshu stared into his eyes but couldn't find the slightest waver or hint of deceit in those black irises. Goo Mangg's soft lips quivered. He weakly, stubbornly, and softly said,
"I don't regret it. I want revenge."
Weeping, he let his face crumple, a vicious howl tearing its way from his throat.
"I want revenge."
The Guoshu finally seemed moved. He released Goo Mangg's jaw. Slowly, he lifted that hand to gesture to the attendants.
"Come."
At his command, his subordinates nearby responded immediately.
"Awaiting the Guoshu's orders. Carve all the black magic spells of Liao into his bones." "Yes."
The Guoshu reached out and patted Goo Mangg's head with a hand covered in his own blood, caressing it as if Goo Mahng had somehow proven himself.
"General Goo, do you know what this means?"
An indecipherable light glinted in the Guoshu's deep brown eyes.
"For the rest of your life, no matter if you lose your memories, or if your bones shatter, or if your eyes are gouged out and your tongue is cut away, as long as but a single shard of bone remains, you will be under the control of our black magic. You will never escape. Everything you can use, the only thing you will use, will be our filthy techniques carved into your bones, scorned by all the world. You will never be able to forget them."
He grinned, exposing sharp white fangs in an eerie smile.
"Congratulations, General Goo. You belong to my Liao kingdom now."
Goo Mangg's vision flickered, dreams overlapping reality. That golden mask disappeared, replaced by Zhou He's scowling face. Zhou He lifted Goo Mangg's chin with Lie Ying's sharp tip. "What are you thinking about?" Goo Mahng made no sound. Whether he had been an acceptable general, he didn't know. But at least he had always been an exemplary spy. Even if his memories were broken and shattered, even if he found himself confused and bewildered at many points, he had guarded this secret with his life. Regardless of whether it was the Liao Kingdom, or Ludanxing, or Morsi, he'd always held safe those truths he must not say. In this respect, he had never failed at being a spy. Goo Mangg's silence appeared to anger Zhou He. "I'd very much like to see how long you think you can last," he growled darkly. An array glowed to life. Chains rattled out from all sides, restraining Goo Mangg's limbs and neck. Zhou He turned to his attendants. "You may begin." Chapter 123. All men are selfish. Every nation had its dark side, and any country's ministry of secret techniques would forever be one of its dirtiest, bloodiest, most unspeakable places. This was true in the Liao Kingdom, and it was just as true in Chonghua. Zhou He sat in the rosewood chair spread with silver fox fur, one leg crossed over the other as he observed the scene in front of him. Black magic trials were terrifyingly cruel, but they were also fast. Scarcely an instant's time had passed since he'd given the order and 2 rounds of experiments had already been conducted. Goo Mahng hung, strung up by the chains. Zhou He had used no numbing or suppressing herbs on him due to the requirements of the spells, and Goo Mahng could feel each slice of the knife and each bit of the goo worms. The bandages that gagged his mouth and pressed against his tongue were already soaked with blood. A nearby cultivator cut another length of gauze and took hold of Goo Mangg's unconscious face to replace the bloody cloth. Goo Mahng didn't react at all, his slender neck lolling. His face was paler than ice. Even his lips were completely bloodless. "How is his spiritual flow?" asked Zhou He. "Extremely weak." What about the heart vein? In complete disorder. The Sishu Terrace cultivators watched 3 important indicators in these trials: spiritual energy flow, the heart vein, and mental strength. If preserving the specimen's life was of any importance at all, then these vitals had to be constantly monitored. Zhou He frowned slightly as he examined Goo Mangg's white and lifeless face, and his grip tightened on the armrests of his round back chair. Beyond reporting to the Emperor, he still had that person's orders to complete. But given his current state, Goo Mahng might not withstand much more. No one could endure such torment when their spiritual flow and pulse were both approaching collapse. He would break. Biting his lip and closing his eyes in apprehension, Zhou He scowled. His grip on the chair slowly relaxed. He sighed, somewhat vexed, and asked with an air of resignation, "How is his mental strength?" The cultivator monitoring Goo Mangg's condition put their fingertips to Goo Mangg's forehead, soaked in cold sweat. Their eyes flew open at once. In disbelief, they checked again. "How is it?" Zhou He asked impatiently. Elder, to answer your question." The disciple turned, stammering. The test subject's mental strength remains strong. His mind shows no signs of deterioration." Zhou He blanched. How could that be? Over the course of his long tenure at Sishu Peak, subjects whose willpower hadn't collapsed in the first round of trials, much less the second, were rare as phoenix feathers. And those were by and large sturdy, durable, and healthy people. Goo Mangg's physical condition was poor. The Liao Kingdom's tempering had left the marks of countless old wounds on his body, and 3 years at Luomei Pavilion had weakened him further. Now his heart vein and spiritual flow had reached their limit. How could he still... Jumping to his feet, Zhou He strode over to Goo Mahng and reached up with a spell at his fingertips to examine his icy forehead. In that single touch, Zhou He's astonishment multiplied. Goo Mangg's mental fortitude showed no signs of crumbling whatsoever. If you ignored his blood-stained body, Zhou He would have never believed this the mental strength of a man who had been ravaged by black magic experiments until insensible. His steadiness seemed carved into his bones, so stubborn and formidable was the mind under Zhou He's fingers. What exactly drove his persistence? "Elder, what do we do next? The test subject's body can bear no more, but based on his mental strength, perhaps we could still..." Zhou He gestured for silence. He stared into Goo Mangg's face, an intense unease pricking at his heart. In addition to completing the Emperor's black magic experiments, he had also, due to a personal relationship, secretly accepted a request from a close friend. He had to scramble Goo Mangg's memories. What in Goo Mangg's memories was worth scrambling? He didn't know. After all, he already had amnesia and his mind was slow. But since they'd spoken, Zhou He wouldn't shrink from this favor. He had thought it more convenient to tend to this task after the trials were through, when Goo Mangg's mind was completely destroyed. But it seemed things hadn't gone as smoothly as expected. Zhou He paused, deep in thought. "You may withdraw." "Yes." When the attendants had left the room, Zhou He approached Goo Mahng and lifted Liao-ying. Inch by inch, he polished it to a gleam. He extended the blade, its icy surface pressed to Goo Mangg's equally icy cheek. The holy weapon sensed at once that the body before it held a strong soul. Its bloodthirsty falcon began shaking with excitement in Zhou He's hand. Zhou He leaned down and brought his lips to Goo Mangg's ear, murmuring to the unconscious man. "General Goo, I've conducted thousands of trials and wrung innumerable men of steel into puddles of muddy waters. You alone are the exception. Honestly, I admire you." Liao-ying flashed bright, its glare intensifying until it was blinding white. "Unfortunately, I've been entrusted with the task of breaking your mind." No response came. "My apologies." With the flick of his wrist, Liao-ying transformed into many transparent chains coiling in his palm. They were as thin as willow branches, darting between his fingers like snakes as they hovered beside Goo Mangg's head. "Liao-ying," Zhou He commanded in a low voice, "soul chaos." As the order left his thin lips, Liao-ying emitted a shrill like a predator finally receiving its master's command. Those fine chains flew out, drilling into Goo Mahng's skull. Oh, God. Ah! Blood sprayed. Goo Mahng was jolted awake by the devastating pain of that strike. He lifted his head, whimpering through a mouth gagged with gauze. His screams were weak with exhaustion, but tears flowed down his blood-stained cheeks. His blue eyes opened wide, pupils contracting violently. Strung up midair, he struggled with all his might as the restraints holding him clanked. The fine chains of the holy weapon flailed madly within his skull like a violent intruder, screeching as they shattered his memories. Those scenes he had so painstakingly recalled, recovered, and come to possess his priceless lucidity. Goo Mahng stared through wide blue eyes. In the throes of his agony, the delighted shouts of his brothers on the frontier were erased. The emperor's promise upon the golden stage was erased. Lu Zhanxing's sorrowful, bold laughter in the prison's chamber of ice was erased. And the depths of his memories, Moxi's tender gaze when he looked at him, the love and devotion he had promised him over and over, were all erased. Every memory Liu tore apart, Goo Mahng strove to recollect, resisting and trembling in despair. He had been stripped of his mind once already, and now he was about to suffer it once more at Zhou He's hands. A feeling of outrage suddenly overwhelmed him. Why did they treat him like this? Why did they reduce him to this? Why? For the promise of a better world, he'd offered up his flesh, his elder brother, his conscience, his lover, and his reputation. He had nothing left. He had even forgotten himself. He had even thought he really betrayed his country and betrayed its people. That he really had been willing to sacrifice anything for his ambition and vengeance. Because of this, he had once agonizingly knelt before Moxi and before Muzhong Lian. He had knelt before each martyr's tombstone on Warrior Soul Mountain, kowtowing to them one by one, imagining ways he could start anew. Later, the heavens showed him mercy. The time mirror somehow allowed him to recover those memories from before he defected. Even if they were painful, at least he could know he was a spy, an undercover agent. The knife Chonghuat had sent into the belly of the Liao kingdom. He wasn't a traitor. Tears spilled from Goo Mangg's eyes. He was allowed so little. He only wanted to remember who he was. They had to take even this away? His mouth had been gagged. He couldn't speak, but the blue eyes he turned on Zhou He were almost beseeching. This was the first time, and only time, that Goo Mahng had looked at him this way since the trials began. Like a cub that had been driven to a dead end, regarding the hunter in front of it with despair. Goo Mangg's resistance was rewarded with Liu Ying's chain puncturing his mind even more frenetically. Goo Mahng howled, a heart-stopping, lung-splitting sound. The tendons in his neck stood in stark relief, his nails gouged deep in his palms. He was gagged by the bandages, but still wailed a hopeless, unintelligible plea. Don't. Please, no more. Don't take my mind. Don't take my memories. I've had them for so little time. I haven't had the chance to take a look at the Northern Frontier Army, to see what those youths who march beside me look like now. I haven't had the chance to walk through the streets and alleys of Chonghua, to see if my country is a little better than before. I haven't yet gone to the shores of the soul-calling abyss, to offer a jug of wine and light a stick of incense under the old pagoda tree where Daka's head is buried. I haven't yet made arrangements for my silly princess's future. I don't want to forget. I don't. The holy weapon in Zhou He's hand emitted a buzzing cry. Liu Ying burst with a despairing and enraged light, unable to strike the killing blow. With a boom, the spiritual energy chains retracted from Goo Mangg's skull, solidifying into a blood-stained dagger once more. Zhou He took a stunned step backward, staring at the holy weapon in his hand, then at Goo Mahng, his face ashen. How could this be? Why was this person... Before he could finish the thought, Goo Mahng went limp, scarlet spurting from the wounds in the side of his head. All the vitality flowing through his organs seemed to have been spent in that split second. He curled in on himself, spasming uncontrollably, blood streaming from his mouth and nose. The gauze between his teeth was completely soaked through. Zhou He heard a commotion outside the Asura room. The Su Shi Terrace disciples outside seemed to be arguing with someone. He stood frozen, unable to react, until someone flung open the stone doors with a bang. A man in a state not unlike Goo Mangg's stood outside the Asura room. Disciples timidly clustered around him, trying to stop him without daring to make a move. Zhou He couldn't believe his eyes. Shihajun? Chapter 124, Bringing You Out of Hell. Morsi stood outside the door, looking as if he had just crawled out of a sea of corpses. His face was white as paper, his clothes mottled with bloodstains, and his gaze was terrifyingly wild. Jiang Yexue had also come, but unlike Morsi, he looked uneasy in the extreme. His expression was gloomy as he sat in his wheelchair, looking in helpless sorrow at the two people on either side of the stone door. They were both filthy with blood and riddled with wounds, yet they showed the same stubbornness, the same unbreakable will. The instant Morsi caught sight of Goo Mahng, his composure crumbled. It was as though he hadn't felt any of the pain from his own body until then. Yet now, the weight of their combined anguish crashed over him. His feet carried him toward Goo Mahng, but only the first few steps could be described as walking. By the end, he was rushing forward in staggering steps and lurching stumbles. Goo Mahng. That murmur fell from pallid lips. He called again, his emotions breaking loose as if some shackles had fallen away. Goo Mahng. Goo Mahng. Even with his spiritual core on the brink of failure, he recklessly summoned Shuaizhen, breaking the chains that held Goo Mahng with a single whip strike. That body, soaked in fresh blood, fell limply down, and Morsi caught him in his embrace. It's okay. It's okay. I'll take you away. I'll take you away right now. It's okay. The man in his arms was so cold, the tips of his fingers were purple. Dark blood dripped from his temples. With a trembling hand, Morsi pulled the gauze from Goo Mangg's mouth, his vision blurred by tears that fell onto Goo Mangg's small and filthy face. The truth was, his Shuxiong had never been big or tall. His features were soft, naive, bursting with a sense of innate childishness. But those around him had grown used to his strength, his courage, his hard-charging spirit, his unfailing warmth. It was these qualities that made him their lighthouse, and why they saw him as invincible. Only as Morsi held him now did he discover how frail and thin the man in his arms was. Time had sapped Goo Shuxiong and General Goo's vitality. What was left for Goo Mahng was merely a mortal body covered in scars. These scars, both new and old, wove together before Morsi's eyes. Sorrow and anguish racked him as he realized Goo Mahng had been shattered too many times. The death of his comrades, his brother's execution, his secret mission as a spy, his tempering at the hands of the Liao kingdom, those 5 years on enemy lines, being forced to slay his own brothers. Fate had pushed him from great heights again and again. He had fallen and shattered into innumerable shards, but each time had pieced himself back into human shape again and again. He had tried his best to glue himself back together. Anyone else in his place might have been smashed to powder, reduced to dust, never able to stand again. But Goo Mahng had always gritted his teeth and endured, because behind him were those brothers who would never return, and before him was the dawn he yearned for. Goo Mahng. Jee-ahng had dealt Goo Mahng too great a shock. Though he had escaped its worst, the memories he had painstakingly recovered had been irrevocably damaged. He turned tearful blue eyes and gazed hazily at Morsi. Morsi knew Goo Mahng still wanted to feign strength. Perhaps he even wanted to push Morsi away. Before he could, Morsi caught the hand he raised, holding that icy palm covered in purpling bruises from the chains. Goo Mangg's eyes were half-lidded, exhausted, his gaze unfocused. Morsi, it's me. I'm here. Morsi said through hoarse sobs, taking Goo Mangg's hand, wet lashes trembling as he pressed a kiss to his fingertips. I'm right here. Goo Mahng stared blankly at the man in front of him. His awareness had gone murky. The shattered remains of his memories whirled in his head as if they might dissipate at any moment. Those snowy nights in the barracks, those sunny afternoons at the academy, their desperate entwining on the night of Morsi's coming of age, each and every time his princess, his royal highness, had promised him a future together. Everything seemed to be covered in one layer of snow, then another. A snowstorm swirled over his mind, threatening to cover the traces of the past, little by little. Goo Mahng knew he might not be able to hold on much longer. The agony of losing something he had just regained was filling his body. His most beloved person was right next to him, yet he was about to forget him too. At that moment, in the throes of torment, Goo Mahng suddenly felt an unhappiness and vulnerability he had never known before. His fingers tightened around Morsi's hand. Eyes widening, he panted urgently, gazing at Morsi's face, his voice roughened and weak. But what should he say? I'm not a traitor. I'm not a bad guy. It wasn't that I didn't love you. It wasn't that I wasn't willing to be with you. It wasn't that I wanted to push you away. Will you trust me? But he couldn't say a thing. Even now, he wasn't able to say anything. He couldn't say anything. The years bygone storm on the Golden Terrace poured over his burning mind, extinguishing that single spark of selfishness. He seemed to hear the Emperor's voice once more, imploring, but oh so awe-inspiring, presenting the dream he had chased after his entire life penniless. We can even promise you that one day we will show you that future where heroes can be heroes no matter the circumstances of their birth, and every life will be treated equally. Heroes, regardless of their background, everyone treated as equals. Never again would there be someone like Liu Zhanxing pulled unwittingly into a fight between old and new powers and dying an unjust death. Never again would there be someone like him who couldn't protect his own brothers or do what he wanted most, who was beaten down all his life because of his lowly birth. Never again lovers who, because of blood and lineage, were forced to sneak around and hide, too afraid to give their hearts to one another. General Goo, we need someone loyal enough, brave enough, and clever enough. We need this person to infiltrate the Liao kingdom and send information back to us, to become the poison in the bellies of both Liao and those old nobles. Subject Goo, are you willing to endure a difficult mission as Chonghua's right hand? The rumbling thunder and flashing lightning above the Golden Terrace seemed to light up his mind once more. He opened his eyes, extinguishing all his human selfishness and swallowing all his words back into his stomach. Yes, he was a spy. From that day he agreed to the Emperor's request. He had relinquished any hope of turning back. But as if the heavens took pity on him, as if the heavens felt his lifetime of suffering should have some measure of sweetness in it. Though he hadn't said it, he felt Morsi grip his hand, heard him murmur, I trust you. Vacant blue eyes turned sluggishly to stare at Morsi's grieving face. I'll always trust you. I'll never leave you again. Goo Mahng knew he should have been shocked. He should have asked why Morsi would say this now, what he had discovered and experienced. But perhaps because his mind was already a mess, his strongest feeling just then was that it was all so unfair. I trust you. After 5 years' defection and 3 years back home, he suddenly realized with impossible clarity he had always been waiting to hear this sentence. Even in his sleep, in his dreams, he had longed for someone to say this. But no one ever had. No one had gifted him these 3 words until today. Living as a spy for so many years still hurt so much, far too much. Tears spilled from Goo Mangg's eyes at last. His throat worked as if trying to say something, but his mouth was filled with blood. He couldn't make a sound. Only his lips were moving, trembling, shivering, his silent tears adding their marks to his bedraggled face. Never had Morsi seen Goo Mahng cry so despondently, so helplessly. He lifted a blood-stained hand to caress Goo Mangg's face. He wanted to wipe away Goo Mangg's tears, but his clumsy touch left streaks of filth in its wake. Morsi's tears were also falling uncontrollably. His fingers shook as he stroked Goo Mangg's soft, icy cheek. He gave up trying to wipe his tears and stared at Goo Mahng. There were so many people around them, but he didn't care anymore. He lowered his lashes, heavy with tears, his vision filled with one person alone. Morsi said hoarsely, "Shizun, I'm sorry. I've made you wait too long. I've come to take you home." He scooped Goo Mahng up, putting his arms over his shoulders. Only then did Zhou He seem to wake from a dream and shout, "Shihajun!" Morsi didn't answer. "Don't you know His Imperial Majesty has given orders that Goo Mahng is a test subject? Morsi didn't let him finish. His phoenix eyes flicked up, their rims bright red. "His Imperial Majesty gave orders to do many things, some of them completely unknown to others. Right now, all I want to know is when His Imperial Majesty gave you this assignment, whether he did so with guilt." "Have you gone mad? Have you any idea what you're saying?" Zhou He turned and cried, "Detain him!" Morsi had gone mad. Without another word, he lifted his free hand. Blue light gathered in his palm. Jiang Yexue's face went deathly pale. "Morsi, stop!" But why would he stop? 8 years' worth of time separated him from his Shizun. If he stopped now, how could he catch up to Goo Mahng from 8 years ago, who walked away alone with a bag on his back, surrounded by song? Morsi closed his eyes and called with a furious shout, "Chuntian, come!" The whipping gale spun up, and a blue scepter appeared in his hand. Morsi felt a pang of agony like a knife twisting in his heart. Fresh blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. Fine cracks spread over his spiritual core, each wisp and shred of magic doing irrevocable damage to his body. The light at the scepter's tip blazed in Morsi's eyes. Channeling his spiritual energy, Chuntian lengthened into a scepter 10 feet tall, towering over any man. It had a white rod and a golden finial emblazoned with a sun totem, the sapphire inlaid within emitting a dazzling light. A clarion whistle sounded. Chuntian's full form possessed an earth-shattering spiritual energy. The instant it touched the ground, it rumbled with waves of energy. Some weaker disciples found themselves forced to their knee. "Shihajun!" Zhou He's face twisted in rage. "Are you unaware that by pursuing a personal grievance within the ministry and wielding a holy weapon, you have broken martial law? Indict me then." The blue and gold light of the scepter illuminated Morsi's handsome, pale, and resolute face. "I'll wait." Zhou He was speechless. "Morsi," Jiang Yexue whispered. Chuntian was a fearsome holy weapon that could cover 10 leagues and corpses with a single flourish. Even if no one believed Morsi would genuinely use it against his fellow countrymen, the full form of this sun-tipped scepter was terrifying in his hand. Never mind Sushu Terrace, even the Bureau of Military Affairs, with all its martial talents, wouldn't dare stand in his way. Morsi swept a glance over the crowd as they cowered from him and tightened his grip on the unconscious Goo Mahng. The two of them, both covered in wounds, nestled close. Carrying Goo Mahng in his arms, Morsi walked out of that blood-stained hell. Chapter 125. Severe Injury. As Zhou He watched Morsi stride off, his expression was ugly. "Elder, what should we do? What else can we do? Report to His Imperial Majesty. Say that Morsi flouts the law of the land. He trespassed into secure locations, opposed the Emperor's decree, and fought within Imperial walls over private matters." Jiang Yexue frowned. "Elder Zhou, this situation is complex, and His Imperial Majesty is indisposed. I ask you to think carefully." Zhou He instantly blew his top. Bastard Jiang, do you too think to oppose me? Jiang Yexue blinked at him. A member of the Bureau of Military Affairs dare trespass my Sushu terrace and seize a test subject in our custody. If I bore this in silence, how could I hold my head up in the future? I know you're his brother, but you need to understand, your brother has broken the law. Are you trying to excuse his crime? With a wave of his sleeve, Zhou He barked at his attendants. What are you staring at? Hurry up and report to His Imperial Majesty. Yes. 1 hour later, in Shih Manor. The damage the black magic experiments had wrought on Goo Mahng was severe. He had fallen unconscious upon leaving Sushu Terrace and not awakened since. In this long slumber, Goo Mahng dreamed a somber dream. He and Moshi were in their early 20s. They were walking near a long dike on the outskirts of Chonghua. It was dusk, and the setting sun had shed half its painted face. Crimson rouge and brilliant gold powder were smeared across the gloaming, floating over the horizon for endless leagues. Goo Mahng pulled a blade of foxtail grass, twirling it as he walked. I really didn't expect His Imperial Majesty to give you command of the attack on Fan City. After a pause, he continued. It'll be your first command, right? Are you nervous? Moshi lowered his lashes but didn't answer the question. I will win. Goo Mahng smiled. That's right. Remember, the most important thing for a commander is to never let them see you falter. No matter what happens, your men will draw strength from you as long as you don't crumble. Once the general loses his resolve, his army becomes a handful of loose sand, useless no matter how courageous its soldiers may be. You are the soul of the army. The moment you take up the position of general, the lives of each of your brothers are in your hands. Moshi nodded and lifted his hand. Turning into the tawny gold of the setting sun, he looked into Goo Mangg's face. I will. After a pause, he added, Wait for me to come back. Why are you suddenly so serious? Goo Mahng grinned. Is there something I should know? The young man was very earnest and also very awkward, but still clung to his facade of composure. His Imperial Majesty said, if I come away victorious, he'll allow me to leave the Moor clan and establish my own independent household. So? Moshi bit his lip, too afraid for a moment to meet Goo Mangg's eyes. He turned to the glimmering surface of the river, flecks of gold filling his eyes and gilding his lashes. Maybe it was the rosy sunset, or maybe it was something else entirely, but Moshi's face looked a little red, and the tips of his ears were faintly flushed. I'll have my own residence. Goo Mahng blinked at him. He was also slow to react. For both of them, this was their first relationship, and truth be told, neither was much wiser than the other. Goo Mahng looked at Moshi in confusion. He hesitated. That's nice. Then, congrats? Almost simultaneously, Moshi asked softly, Will you come live with me? They stared at each other in silence. Moshi's elegant features flushed redder. He coughed quietly, and then, as if wanting to recover his pride, or not wanting to pressure Goo Mahng over much, he lowered his lashes evasively. If you don't want to, that's fine too. I can wait. No, that's not what I meant. What I mean is, I've already looked at the plans. The longer he spoke, the more embarrassed he became. The harder he tried to hide his softness and inexperience, the more obviously they were laid bare. Finally, the usually calm and composed Moshi pushed Goo Mahng away. He walked over to the dike and buried his face in his hands, mumbling morosely. I'm sorry, I was only asking. As Goo Mahng had watched this young man clumsily, stubbornly try to express his intent, he suddenly understood something. This little shooty of his hadn't yet left on his campaign or fought his battle, but he was so certain of victory that he'd secretly gone to look at plans. He felt heartsore. He knew Moshi had always been sincere with him. He was just too scared to accept it. Perhaps it was because Moshi was about to leave for the front lines, or because there had always been some selfishness hidden in the bottom of Goo Mangg's heart. In any case, Back then, he hadn't rejected Morsi's suggestion. This had delighted the young men to no end. That night, neither returned to their own abodes. They spent the whole night making love in an inn outside the city. It passed like a dream. By the end, Goo Mahng had not a drop of energy left. He lay there with his face buried in the sheets, eyes still wet with tears, silent and dazed. His eyes were half-lidded, lashes quivering. In this hazy state, he heard Morsi softly say, "There's something I want to give to you." Goo Mahng hadn't the wherewithal to ask many more questions, and Morsi had already taken hold of the hand he had burrowed into the sheets, his broad palm covering Goo Mangg's fingers. He felt a faint prickling sensation as two arrays glowed red where their hands were joined. The light glided over their interlocked fingers and floated up to the side of Goo Mangg's neck. Still foggy with exhaustion, Goo Mahng asked quietly, "What is this?" "A tiny sword array." Morsi released his hand and reached up to stroke Goo Mangg's neck with lightly calloused fingers. "I know people are always trying to bully you. They're afraid of stirring up trouble and too scared to use magic, so they only dare press their physical advantage." He looked down, turning his head to gently kiss Goo Mahng on the neck. "I gave a drop of blood to form this array. I haven't fixed its form, so you can shape it into whatever you want. A character, a flower, anything. When I'm not here, it will protect you. Of course, if you don't want it, you can seal it off too." Goo Mahng felt that soft kiss brush over his skin as he listened silently, tangled in the bedding. A whole host of emotions welled up in his heart. He wanted to laugh with glee. He wanted to weep with sorrow. He knew he wouldn't go live with Morsi in his residence. It would be a house, not a home. A home was somewhere two people could rightfully and openly make a life together. It wasn't somewhere one needed to hide, or love one another as if carrying on a clandestine affair, covering their tracks as if ashamed. Morsi could give him a place to stay, but he couldn't truly give him a home. They were not the same. Their paths were always destined to diverge. He knew he would refuse Morsi in the end, but as he looked at this youth's earnest and beseeching face, he couldn't say anything. His body had become pliant under the hands of his little Shudi, and his heart, too, had long since melted into a puddle. Moving as if pricked by guilt, he turned to caress Morsi's face. "Will you only leave a sword sigil for me?" He smiled, his dark eyes gentle. "Then what if someone tries to bully you?" Morsi blinked at him. Of course, no one would dare pick a physical fight with Morsi, but it was as though something compelled these two people doomed to separate paths to leave some secret on each other's bodies, known only to the two of them. Goo Mahng bit his own finger and rolled over, tapping the side of Morsi's neck. He diligently transformed the mark into a red lotus. Then he took hold of Morsi's hand, covering it with his own, and smiled. "I left a drop of my blood too. Make it into a protective sword array on my behalf, so it'll count as me staying by your side, okay?" Morsi's eyes shone brilliantly in the dark. Goo Mahng didn't have the heart to dim that light. "Okay," Morsi said, and folded Goo Mahng into his arms from behind. His warm chest pressed against Goo Mangg's curled back as he stroked his hair and kissed his warm neck, his slightly cool ear. "You have to wait for me to come back. When I come back, everything will be better. You have to trust me." Trust me. Morsi's voice in that vision of the past drifted out of his reach, just like the memories Liu had skewered, scattered, and smashed, falling to pieces. "Wait for me. Everything will be better." In the depths of his awareness, Goo Mahng was struggling, falling to his knees, prostrating again and again to that wholeheartedly devoted Morsi. "I'm sorry. I wish I could have waited for you too. I wish everything would have gotten better. I always trusted you. But, Morsi, some things must be done. Some sacrifices must be made. When fate comes knocking, you have to face it if you don't want to be a coward. We all have our paths to walk. You painted a picture of that future and that home for me.
I lived that beautiful and carefree lifetime through your eyes. That's more than enough. So when you return in fathomless glory and I'm not here, don't be sad. I do love you. All my life, every I love you that left my lips was true. Morsi.
Though he didn't wake, tears fell from the corners of Goo Mangg's eyes, wetting his temples. A crowd of cultivators buzzed around Goo Mangg's bedside as the elder at their bed issued a steady stream of commands. Open another 3 blood-clotting arrays. Place soul-stabilizing needles at the shunting, functure, and zhenying acupoints. When one disciple didn't immediately move, his white brows drew low in anger. Why are you spacing out? Hurry up! The disciple answered hastily. Oh. He looked away from Goo Mangg's face in a panic, but couldn't keep himself from thinking.
Looks like the black magic experiments really were terrible. Otherwise, why would Goo Mahng cry while he's not even conscious?
Place needles at the 3 acupoints, his shifu barked. Your hands have to be steady. Understood. The healers had gathered in front of the bed in Shee Manor's bedroom. The dove-gray, Hui-patterned canopy hung low, and soothing incense wafted from golden beast figurines. But they did nothing to allay the anxiety filling the room. The doctors of Shennong Terrace came in and out, replacing basin after basin of bloody water from cleaning wounds, bringing in prepared tinctures and concocted ointments one after another. No one dared to speak. Sweat beaded on the foreheads of every cultivator and slave. There were 2 patients in the room. One was Goo Mahng, lying in the bed, and the other was Morsi, sitting by the desk. What exactly Morsi had been through, no one knew. How he had sustained such injuries, or why he ignored them for the sake of that traitor lying unconscious on the bed. The healers urgently summoned from Shennong Terrace were utterly bewildered. One cautiously stepped forward. Shihajun, the top-grade flesh regrowth ointment is here. Your wounds. Give it to him. The cultivator stared. Use all these top-grade healing salves on him. The rims of Morsi's eyes were scarlet. His eyes never moved from the bed. I'm fine. The healer tending to Morsi's wounds turned a waxy yellow at this. He wanted to cry.
Daga, you're not fine. Your spiritual core is about to shatter. In what world is that fine?
But when he saw Morsi's determined face, he didn't say a thing. Head down, he continued silently bustling about the room. Suddenly, one of the household servants ran in. My lord, they cried anxiously. What is it? His Imperial Majesty sent Eunuch Zhao with a decree. He says you must go outside to accept the edict. The official messengers were required to read the imperial orders they delivered directly to the subjects involved, but Morsi didn't speak, nor did he move. His hand was still on the gleaming black sandalwood desk as the healer treated his wounds. After a tense silence, 3 words issued from his lips. Let him wait. Holy shit. Oh, God. Okay. The entire room gaped in shock. Yes. One cultivator nearly dropped the bowl of medicine in his hands, staring goggle-eyed at Morsi. All had the same thought.
Could Shihajun have gone insane?
The servant stammered. How could... Morsi repeated unblinkingly. Wait. The servant could do nothing but stumble from the room with this message. Morsi's gaze never left the figure enclosed in talisman arrays. According to the grizzled medicine elder, the Liao kingdom had reshaped Goo Mangg's body in a very strange fashion. Dense yin energy ran in his veins, as if he was a body thousands of people had cursed. Chonghua's healers had little experience treating someone with Goo Mangg's constitution, and his injuries were severe. Drawing on all their skill and effort, the healers could just barely keep Goo Mahng breathing, but they couldn't heal the mental damage he had once more sustained. The medicine elder wiped sweat from his face. How was his mind? The cultivator, who had been casting spells to stabilize Goo Mangg's skull, shook his head. His face was pale and drawn from the effort. Nearing collapse, he said. He was missing 2 souls to begin with, and now... He coughed up a mouthful of blood, completely drained. Morshi's ears rang, his entire body cold as if he'd fallen into a frozen lake. What do you mean? The healers exchanged glances. They kept their heads down, none daring to answer. What will happen to him? At this point, it was left to the elder to deliver the news. His countenance was dreadful, but he braced himself and said, I'm afraid that he might not remember anything. He might be unable to speak. If his mind has deteriorated completely, he might even lose the use of his eyes. Morsi leapt to his feet, shaking all over. His pale lips had gone more bloodless still. The healer, who had been attempting to stabilize his pulse, was thrown off by the burst of spiritual energy that exploded from him. Shihajun, you can't keep moving recklessly. Mo dage. They were cut off by the soft sigh of a melodious female voice. Is this how you risk yourself with the core I gave you? All eyes turned toward the door, then lowered in a deep obeyance. Princess Mengze! Greetings to Princess Mengze! Chapter 126. Mengze's Lament. Princess Mengze wore robes of pale gold with a cape thrown over the top, her thick hair wound in a low bun. As she stepped out of the shadows of the flowers beside the doorway, her handmaiden Jiang followed at her heels, carrying a sandalwood box wrapped in golden brocade. Mengze entered the room, eyes sweeping across the faces of every one present. Her gaze took in Goo Mahng, insensible beneath the gauze canopy, then finally came to rest on Morsi's bloodless face. You were about to risk yourself again, weren't you? Morsi said nothing. Broken light glimmered in Mengze's eyes. The last time your heart shattered, it was also because you wanted to redeem this Shishong of yours. He nearly killed you last time. It was I who rescued you and asked nothing of you. My only wish was that from then on, no matter what people or situations you encountered, you would first consider whether it was worth your life. The room was terrifyingly silent, save for the sound of Mengze's low, heartbroken voice. Modaka, so many years have passed. I ask you now, are you going to be just as stubborn as you were back then and make the same choice? Mengze was, of course, speaking of the battle at Dongting Lake. Morsi had tried to barter his life for Goo Mangg's return and been rewarded with a stab through the heart. It was a blow so decisive and final that even afterward, Morsi felt bitter devastation at the very thought of it. But now that he knew the truth, recalling it once more merely made him feel Goo Mahng had suffered too much. Who do you think you are? You think that if you die, I'll feel guilty and turn back? Don't be a fool. As a general, as a soldier, as a person, you can't be too attached to past affections. What had Goo Mahng felt when he spoke those words and did those deeds? Morsi closed his eyes. There was no way to explain all this to Mengze in a short time. The twists and turns were too difficult to follow. His heart was in chaos. He wanted to preserve Goo Mangg's mind, wanted to protect this man covered in bloody wounds, wanted to demand the justice this spy who had immersed himself in evil for a full 5 years deserved. But the Shenong Terrace elder's words echoed unceasingly in his head. Might not remember anything, might lose the ability to speak. If his mind has fallen apart completely, he might even lose the use of his eyes. The brilliant and gentle black eyes in his memories curved in a smile, twinkling like the reflection of stars on water. They blinked. When they opened again, they had become an azure blue, as if a lake unpolluted by the dust of the mortal world flowed from them. Before he was tempered, Goo Mangg's eyes danced with laughter. Afterward, they gazed at Morsi with quiet obedience. Those eyes called to him. Morsi, Morsi, my princess, my lord. Morsi's hands were trembling. He didn't respond to Mengze, but walked straight to Goo Mangg's bedside. Morsi bent to stare fixedly at that face. With the blood wiped away, it was white as bone. After a long silence, he turned to the elder from Shenong Terrace. Continue. Mengze's eyes finally flashed with anxiety. Morsi, I will explain everything to you afterward, if you only trust me. Mengze fell silent. I have to save him. In the silence that followed, it was as if an invisible current churned beneath the surface. Almost everyone believed Mengze would lash out or explode or break down. But she only went still for a long time and then slowly said, Very well, if this is your choice. Pausing, she stepped forward. Then I will help you. Princess! Yuanyang exclaimed. Mengze seemed to be doing her utmost to restrain some emotion. She had always been proficient at enduring hardship in silence, but this time there was no one who couldn't see the hurt and pain filling her eyes. Her lips parted slightly, as if to say more, but it seemed she had overestimated her ability to remain stoic. The rims of her eyes reddened before any sound left her mouth. She turned away, eyes downcast. Yuanyang's heart ached for her mistress. Disregarding the lines between master and servant, she wailed, Princess, why are you doing this? Mengze closed her eyes, lashes trembling. As she strove to master herself once more, she finally swallowed down that overflowing grief. Her eyes opened. Bring me my medicine chest. Everyone was stunned. Did Muzhong Mengze plan to work the healing arts herself after all this time? Chonghua was home to 2 Grand Master healers. The first was Jiang Fuli, of the 3 poisons, greed, wrath, and ignorance. The second was Muzhong Mengze of the 3 sages, virtue, mind, and wisdom. In order to save Moxi many years ago, Mengze had overdrawn the power of her spiritual core. There were many spells she could no longer perform on her own. After painstakingly tending to her health for so many years, her body was only just starting to recover. If she used healing magic now, the results were sure to be unparalleled, but she might come out a complete invalid. How could Moxi allow her to make another sacrifice like this? He caught her wrist, stopping her quietly. Mengze, go home. I already owe you a life. I cannot let him owe you more. Muzhong Mengze's slender eyes gradually filled with tears. Perhaps all her waiting and endurance had been too much. This imperial princess, who never let her emotions slip, fell so far as to show red-rimmed, wet eyes before a staring crowd. Modaga, you're so sad when something happens to him. But have you ever thought of me? The crowd had never heard Mengze express herself so frankly, and for a moment, all of them were at a loss. This wasn't something they should see or hear, but they couldn't leave, so they could only stand as still as statues. Mengze's voice shook. If you come to any harm, what do you think will happen to me? I can never cultivate the proper path again. Was my life worth so little in your eyes that I couldn't buy you more than a few short years of peace? As she spoke, a tear finally trickled from her eyes, rolling down her luminous cheek and landing on the back of Moxi's hand. This Shizun of yours, if he's that important to you, I'd rather use forbidden techniques to bring him back. Modaga, I've done everything I can do. I only ask you to have more consideration for me in the future. Then I could at least... She closed her eyes, fat teardrops falling like beads off a broken string. Moxi's mind was like a bowstring strained to its limit. Goo Mahng's treatment could not be delayed. He urgently needed to ask the Shenlong Terrace elder if there was anything else they could try. But here Mengze was in such a state. Moxi had never known how to deal with women. He was anxious and miserable, at a loss for how to stop her from intervening in this matter. He knew how painful it was to owe a favor he could never repay. He couldn't look upon Mengze without feeling guilt and self-reproach. Yet this guilt and blame could never be absolved. What Mengze wanted was something he'd long since given to the man on that bed. He couldn't possibly give it to her. Because of this, he had never known what to say in front of her, or what to do, as if he were bound by invisible strings. There were many things he could do if Mengze asked that he would never do otherwise. Moxi found this lack of agency unbearable. He couldn't let Goo Mahng, too, bear a debt of grace he could never repay. At this moment, the healer who had been maintaining the stability of Goo Mahng's mind coughed up a great mouthful of filthy blood. The magical light array in his hands flickered and fell. What happened? The Shenlong Terrace elder exclaimed. His condition is too strange. Vicious intent suddenly burst across his mind. This disciple is unskilled and could not withstand it. At that instant, on the bed, Goo Mangg's eyes snapped open, but not because he'd woken up. His eyes were darting side to side, his pupils eerily unfocused, his lips moving as if to lay a curse. Bloody tears streamed from his eyes, flowing along those edges that were slender as phoenix tails. An inexperienced young healer cried, "What's going on?" "This is the backlash from the black magic curse within his body," Mengze murmured. She looked up at Morsi. "His mind is breaking down. Already, I'm unsure whether I can save him. If the damage isn't brought under control, he will die." Morsi's face instantly paled. Mengze took note of his panic. "If you want to preserve his life, let me help," she offered sadly. After all, in your heart I'm—" But before she could finish, a voice from outside cut her off. "Princess, why so pessimistic?" That voice was slow and unhurried, carrying a note of innate scorn and arrogance. "That man on the bed is tough as nails. He won't die, and his mind won't break." Those words echoed into the room. A man wearing wide-sleeved green robes with a golden pin through his hair sauntered into the room. "I'm here, aren't I?" If these medicine cultivators, who admired skill with healing magic above all, were apprehensive over Princess Mengze's presence, then this new arrival's entrance left them ready to fall to their knees. "Greetings to Medicine Master Jiang." Mung-zuh was also stunned. "Medicine Master Jiang?" Jiang Foo-lee's expression was indifferent. His eyes narrowed. This was his distinctive habit. His vision had never been good, probably because he spent too much time counting his money. Without his Liu-li eyepiece, those almond eyes were hazy, as if cloaked in misty Jiangnan rain. Jiang Fuli brandished a golden cowrie note pinned between pale, slender fingertips. He turned to Morsi. "Was it you who sent the spiritual messenger beast to bring this to me?" "Your wife said you left for the southern frontier," replied Morsi. "Yes, but I hadn't gotten far. Besides, when have I ever been unwilling to take money? I rushed back as soon as I saw this." Jiang Fuli flicked that dazzling golden note, glancing at Goo Mahng on the bed. "But his condition is dreadful. I'm tripling your fee." Morsi anxiously started. "My Shizun's life, both his life and his eyes are salvageable." Jiang Fuli paused, then walked forward and tapped Goo Mahng on the forehead. "Hard to say if the same applies to his mind, but he won't be left with nothing. I'll have healed him first to know for sure. Regardless, I'll do my best." Jiang Fuli was a heartless man with no moral convictions. The single principle underlying his actions was money, and making more of it. As long as he was paid handsomely, he would spare no effort. Sitting at the edge of the bed, he pulled open Goo Mangg's robes and examined the wounds on his body. He sighed. "You've spent so much time and only gotten this far? Rank amateurs." The cultivators from Shenlong Terrace could only stare in silence. Jiang Fuli extended slender fingers and tapped Goo Mangg's critical acupoints in a few rapid motions, staunching the flow of blood. He lifted a hand and said, "Bring it over." He didn't name what he needed, assuming bystanders would intuit the line of his thoughts. The healer closest to him hastily handed him a medicine chest. "Why would I want your little box?" "Gauze!" Jiang Fuli snapped. Pinned by that almond-eyed stare, the cultivator shivered and frantically offered him the gauze he wanted. Jiang Fuli wiped the blood from Goo Mangg's most severe wounds. When he reached Goo Mangg's arm, Jiang Fuli suddenly paused. "What is it?" Morsi asked at once. The medicine master frowned as he examined a spot on Goo Mangg's arm. "This petal-shaped mark. It isn't new. He's had it since he was young. Of course, I can see that it's not from a recent injury." Jiang Fuli's gaze remained on that mark. "It just looks familiar. Why do I feel I've seen one just like this, but on a different patient?" He hesitated and shook his head. "Possibly there were just similarities, and I've misremembered." With that, he tossed the bloodied gauze aside and sat up to begin healing Goo Mangg's wounds with magic. The water clock by the table in the bedroom dripped, A hush fell over the room as Jiang Fuli sat at Goo Mahng's bedside. 2 slender fingers hovered at Goo Mahng's wrist, monitoring his pulse while passing spiritual energy into his body. Jiang Fuli's healing spells were distinct from Chonghua's standard treatments. The medicine cultivators around them could barely follow what he was doing. They merely watched as the wounds marring Goo Mahng's flesh re-knit at an astonishing rate, and the bruises on his face faded. Jiang Fuli, the cunning reserver of fate, lives up to his name, Mengze murmured. The princess flatters me, Jiang Fuli calmly replied. The Shengnong Terrace elder edged closer. Medicine Master Jiang, do you need anything? Can we lend a hand? Oh yes, I do need something, said Jiang Fuli. Medicine Master Jiang, only say the word. The elder hastily replied. We are at your command. I need your silence, Jiang Fuli answered. He didn't get his wish. Moments later, a servant dashed in as if flames were licking at his heels, shouting at the top of his lungs, Bad news! Bad news! Moshi turned. What is it this time? Bad news! The servant cried again. My lord, Housekeeper Lee can't stall them any longer. Eunuch Zhao is furious. He says if my lord refuses to respect the imperial edict to meet him, his people will charge in and escort you to the palace. Oh my God. What? I cannot. You guys, I just cannot. I cannot with this story. Okay, I guess we're going to go ahead and start on my notes now. Just give me like a quick second to compose myself. Okay, here we are. So we have it. I'm just going to go chapter by chapter. Chapter 22, from now on into the abyss. We have, so Goo Mahng is getting tested in Sushu Terrace, run by Zhou He. The room is cold, and then we just go into the memory of the sufferings that Goo Mahng faced when he was being tempered and initiated into the Liao Kingdom, which I have to say, hearing the things that he went through there, I was just like, fuck. Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? It kind of greatly reminded me of like joining a gang where they have to beat you up first, or you have to be humiliated in some kind of way, or a sorority or a fraternity where you are hazed in such an awful way. And then you, oh my God. Sorry for anyone who's in a fraternity and in a sorority. I'm not saying all of them do, but many of them do. I've heard so many stories. Anyway, it was just so awful to hear. So to hear that when he was in the place, he's like, meh, this is whatever. Like, I've already been through this before. And then for him to like endure the same pain and stuff again. And it's like, oh, his mind is actually like super strong. Meanwhile, everything else is like failing, essentially. Also, it was interesting to hear that the Guoshi himself, all those years ago, which I'm sure it's still the case now, is basically the ruler. There's the 16-year-old ruler there, but he looks to the Guoshi. So, yeah. But just knowing what he had to go through in order to even like prove his loyalty to the Liao Kingdom is really, really sucky, and just makes me feel worse for him all over again. Man. Then I guess the next thing I'll talk about is when it talked about Goo Mahng suffering a life worse than death as they were removing all of Chonghua's techniques from his body and implanting the dark magic. Yeah, black magic. It was saying things like, it said literally he suffered a life worse than death, but it was like saliva was dripping from the corners of his mouth. His flesh was mangled and sliced to pieces. And I was just like, oh my God, like that is so graphically horrible. And it's just like, what do we do? And then also we learned that Goo Mahng was actually the reason why Moshi was delayed when he was sent off to with the northern frontier into battle and whatnot. Goo Mahng didn't want to see him because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to follow through with his Imperial Majesty's plans. So then, of course, let's just go ahead and move to chapter 23, which I kind of already mentioned a little bit as far as like there were 3 things that needed to be preserved. And that would be like spiritual energy flow, the heart vein, and mental strength. And the mental strength was there. He had his fortitude at peak. And it was just Like, wow. But then the other thing was that Zhou He was not only doing what the emperor told him, but what some close friend told him, which was to scramble Goo Mahng's memories. Who is this friend? And so y'all already know who I thought of immediately. I was like, Jiang Yexue. Not saying that it was him, but I'm still like, I still don't trust you. Anyway, but then we have him, trying to take away Goo Mahng's memories. And I just felt so bad for him because he's already had them taken from him again and already believed himself to be a traitor. And here it is. Everything's being pulled away from him once again, and it's just so sad. But I was glad to see that he was fighting. And of course, at the very, very end of chapter 123, but going into 124, I was so, so glad that Moshi showed up and was like, I'm taking you out of this place and I don't care what happens. You want to indict me? Go ahead and do it. Fine, whatever. I get it. But it's just sucky to know that, one thing I will say I wanted to talk about, because I think in my last video I talked about the emperor and me believing possibly, that he was a bit more genuine. And I do think there are certain parts of him that were genuine, but one thing that I was taught by my mother is that you only need a little bit of truth to sell a lie. And so I do feel like, especially with this here, with the emperor having given Zhou He the edict to be able to torture Goo Mahng to learn new things, that even more so calls into question how much of what the emperor said can be believed. Like, I do believe that he wants to make changes in his society. I do believe that he's tired of the old nobles because they're so backward thinking and he wants to move forward, and he knows that certain things need to be done in order to do that. I can even believe that he probably wants to utilize slaves and have them as normal citizens in the world, because having them not oppressed could be something that is beneficial to Chonghua. But I don't think that means that he still doesn't see them as lesser. It's kind of like the world we live in today. Yeah, people of color, when I say people of color, I mean all people of color. So not just black people, but people of color, we have rights and stuff now, but that doesn't take away the fact that there are people who still don't like people of color, who think people of color need to return where they came from and stuff like that. But you just deal with it because that's the way the world is now. And in some ways, it's better to have the world this way. And in some ways, it's not, according to some people. But it's like, how could you tell Goo Mahng that he is your treasure, that you treasure him and all of the other slave fighters, soldiers, and then turn around and allow him to be experimented on? Like, I get it. Because of the story that's being told, he is the quote unquote best test subject, as has been said before. But you should have found somebody else. You just should have found somebody else. I don't know. I don't know where I stand with the emperor. Right now, I still don't. I never did like him. But I really don't like him in this scenario. So I'm not even really going to talk about the dream that Goo Mahng had, I guess, going into chapter 125. That just is what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll just skip to chapter 106. I don't feel bad for Princess Mengze. Not really. It's one of those things where I understand how she feels, but at the same time, she should have known already that the one that Moshi cares about the most is Goo Mahng. Like, she should know this even from the New Year's party when she was fussing at him. Like, why would you still fight for that traitor? Like, clearly, ma'am, even if you don't know that he is in love with Goo Mahng, you have to know that Goo Mahng is important above all else to Moshi. Always has been and always will be. And the man already told you where he stands concerning you. So for me, it's like, it's not that he doesn't care about you, princess, but you don't hold that number one spot in his heart. And if he has to choose between you and Goo Mahng, of course he's going to choose Goo Mahng. Does it hurt for you? Yeah, sure. But that's what you signed up for, essentially, when you decided to save him and, you know, mess up your own self physically to help him out, you know. Like, so it's like, on one hand, yeah, I feel bad for her because she still has feelings, and it's like she backed off from flirting or, you know, trying to get with him or anything like that. But she still had the feelings. And so this moment for her was like that final straw that was like, okay, yeah, he really, truly doesn't hold me in that special place in his heart that I would have wanted him to. It's like she knew that, but this moment really solidified that for her. And so it's sucky, but at the same time, I'm glad it happened, so she can know, like 100% without a doubt. Because the worst thing someone can do is hold on to hope, you know, after so many years, and hoping like, oh my gosh, maybe if this happens or that happens, maybe. And it's like, no, there's no maybe. There's just nothing. So there's that. And of course, we have Medicine Master Jiang Fuli coming on the scene. We'll see how he handles things because, yeah, I'm not going to say anything else. I don't have anything else to say. Gosh, I just know that we are reading the last 4 chapters. It was going to be 3, but we're going to be reading the last 4 chapters in our live session, at least for those of us who are part of Patreon. So I'm actually going to make a couple of announcements. So I've already posted these things on YouTube, on Patreon, where they need to be posted, but I'm just going to go ahead and say them once again for everyone listening to this recording. So for all of those of you who are on the head disciple tier on my Patreon, we will be going live with each other, with each other this Friday, September 19th from 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's going to be 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. BST, okay, British Standard Time. And then our live recap session, which is going to be everyone, Patreoners and YouTubers, that is going to be the following day, Saturday, September 20th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. PST, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. BST. So what I will do with the live reading that we have on Patreon, obviously, I'm going to make sure it's uploaded for you YouTubers. It's just going to be later after, you know, I get it downloaded and on the video and then put it up. That way, hopefully you guys can be ready for the live session, for the live recap. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. The second thing that I want to talk about, just in case anybody missed my post, I am doing giveaways, okay? So there's a giveaway specifically for my YouTubers and a giveaway specifically for my Patreoners. So for my Patreoners, the giveaway for you all is sign up for the free version of my Patreon. There isn't really much content there, but when you go on Patreon, I gave you like a how-to on my post. You can click join for free. And once you do that, send me a message on Patreon to let me know that you've done it. Or I guess you really don't have to do that, but you can if you want to say, hey, I've signed up for free via YouTube. You know, I'm coming, because there are people that sign up for free on my Patreon and they're not from YouTube. They're just from people searching Danmei stuff on Patreon. So yeah, send me a message and just let me know like, hey, I'm coming over here from YouTube. Now, there are some people I also know who are signing up for like a 7-day free trial of one of my tiers. If you do that, again, send me a message and just let me know that you're specifically coming from YouTube, and I will enter you into this giveaway. I just don't want anyone to miss their opportunity. So it doesn't matter if you join for free or you sign up for a 7-day trial. And of course, remember, if you're signing up for a 7-day trial, once that 7 days is over, it's a subscription. So it's going to renew, and then you'll be charged a $2 or $3 fee, depending on the tier, unless you cancel before then. So just wanted to put that out there for you guys. The tiers, Well, I put them in the post already, but just to say them here. So if you don't want to listen to this, you can kind of skip ahead or whatever. But I do have something to say for my Patreoners. So, of course, the giveaway that I'm doing for you guys is going to be 1 month, specifically October, since I'm leaving next week, of my highest tier, which is Head Disciple. And you'll get all of the video releases 48 hours early. You will also get the exclusive unfiltered smut content that is, since we're reading Remnants of Filth. In Remnants of Filth, 2 live read-alongs each month, then still including any other lives I may do, and audio downloads on Spotify and any other podcast platforms you may want to do. And I'm giving that away to 3 winners that will already be chosen, and I will announce them on our live session. So then, with my Patreoners, you guys have your very own thing as well. And that is going to be a giveaway of 2 months of whatever tier you are already at. And you guys, I put the post up there, but you're supposed to be answering a specific question. So go look at that post and go answer. And my favorite 3 answers will be given 2 free months of my Patreon at whatever stage you're at. And like, the reason that I'm doing this, I mean, well, it's just because I want to. But like I told you guys, I really like what I'm doing, and it's not that I even need the money, you know, even though I can still charge, you know, just because you don't need money doesn't mean you don't have to charge, but I don't need the money. And so for me, something I do want to do, maybe not every month, maybe every other, I don't know, I haven't figured out yet, is I want to offer this opportunity to you, because why not? You know, if I can just do a giveaway here and there, it's whatever to me. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything else to say other than remember, after we finish reading volume 4 and we do the discussion, you guys won't be hearing from me from September the 22nd all the way to the 29th. That is an entire week of silence or just all of next week and all the way to Tuesday. More than likely Tuesday, because I'll have just gotten home on that Monday. You won't hear anything from me because I am going on a vacation. And yeah, so it's going to be quiet. Just go ahead and listen to some other Danmei that you haven't listened to, or re-listen to a Danmei you have listened to, or find something else. I don't know what you're going to do without me. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, that's it. I hope you all enjoy yourselves thoroughly. And I can't wait to see you, depending on, you know, who you are, on Friday. And I can't wait to see you guys on Saturday. So bye-bye and wa ai ni men.